Now, Luke has laid the foundation for the expansion of the gospel in the Gentile world. We've seen the conversion of Saul of Tarsus, who will spearhead that mission. And so now that that's happened, and we've seen the progress report of peace and prosperity and growth in the church, Luke is going to switch gears here and turn in a little different direction. He's going to bring us back to the Apostle Peter. And you might ask, well, why Peter? I mean, Peter's in Jerusalem, and the gospel's now moving out that way. But Peter is going to play an extremely vital role in the taking of the gospel to the Gentile world. And this is a role that we need to pay close attention to, because it is going to result in probably the greatest shift of evangelistic emphasis from the Jewish world to the Gentile world. The Jews will always be a part of this, but the shift of emphasis to the Gentile world is going to happen on the heels of what happens with Peter in the next two chapters. So Peter is taking on itinerant ministry here. He's traveling all around the regions in the area of Judea, and he comes to the place called Lydda, where several saints are located. Again, you see that saints are already spreading around to different places. We saw that in Damascus because there was a disciple there named Ananias, and now you've got Lydda down here, and there are saints there. And a certain saint whose name was Aeneas had been bedridden for 8 years, and he was paralyzed. And so what happens? Peter meets him and he says, Aeneas, Jesus the Messiah heals you. Arise and make your bed. Then he arose immediately. Okay? And so all who dwelt in Lydda and Sharon saw him and turned to the Lord. Now, let's talk about this a little bit. You have a healing miracle here. And of course, as we've seen already, healing is a messianic sign. And so the healing of this man constitutes another indication that Jesus, who performed healing in his ministry, is indeed the Messiah. And as a result of this, you see that God has prepared the hearts of many people in this region of Lydda and Sharon. In fact, Luke says all who dwelt there turned to the Lord. Now, does that mean that every single person who was able to believe actually believed? Not necessarily. Sometimes the New Testament uses the word all to refer to people from all over, just like in Acts 2 when it says that there were Jews present at the day of Pentecost from every nation under heaven. Well, was there not a single nation that was left out, or is he simply saying they came from all over the place? Okay, but however you understand that, many, many, many people came to Christ in that region. And so, looking at a map, you can see Lydda there. It is on a major highway. If you come from Jerusalem, you can see how easy it is to follow a main road to get there. But I also want you to pay attention to what is just up and to the left from Judah on the coast there. You see the city of Joppa. That's where Peter, in God's providence, is going to be heading next. But in Lydda, this miracle takes place. And it's another reminder, I think, also, that as the gospel moves to the Gentiles, it's not as if God is just going to forget about his Jewish people, as the nation of Israel. No, Peter is having a significant ministry among Jewish people. Okay, so let's add this city. Here's your map, and the little dot of Lydda goes right there. Okay, so pretty much in the middle of your map there. You have Jerusalem down and to the right a little bit, and way down at the bottom, remember, is Gaza, and up at the top on the coast is Caesarea. Then you have Samaria over to the right, but that's Lydda right there. Okay, very fertile plain, very good for growing crops and so on. Okay, so at Joppa, there's a certain disciple named Tabitha, which is translated Dorcas. Now, Tabitha would be her Jewish name. Her Gentile name is Dorcas. Now, why does Luke give us both names? Again, perhaps to keep reminding his readers of the Jew-Gentile instrumentality in God's plan here. So this woman was full of good works and charitable deeds, which she did. She was just one of these people who just love making things and sharing things with people. Very, very highly esteemed, greatly loved among the disciples. And again, you have a contingency of believers in that place. But she gets sick and she dies. Wow. And I mean, this is just such a blow to the people. They loved her so much, and now she's gone. And so what happens? Well, they wash her body. They lay her in an upper room. They're going to prepare to do embalming and so forth and care for the body in the way that's prescribed by Jewish law. Well, as you saw on your map, Lydda is near Joppa, and the disciples had heard that Peter was there in Lydda. And so the disciples in Joppa, knowing that Peter is in Lydda, they sent 2 men to him, imploring him not to delay in coming to them. Now, question arises here. Did they do this after she'd already died, or are we to understand that they sent 2 men to seek for Peter while she was still ill and still alive? And we don't know for sure. Either one of those is possible. But whatever the case, whether she's just sick or she's already died, they believe that Peter can do something about this. I mean, they've already witnessed miracles, signs, and wonders by the hands of the apostles. And so they, in faith, send these 2 men to get Peter. So Peter arose and went with them. And when he had come, now he's in Joppa, they brought him to an upper room, the upper room where she was laid. And all the widows stood by him weeping and showing the tunics and garments which she had made while she was with them. You get the idea here in verse 39 that Dorcas had a specific ministry to the widows. And widows in that time, didn't have all of the insurance and the care, the financial help that is available to widows in our culture. And they were pretty much destitute. And she did her part in helping them. So they're all standing around and weeping and feeling badly about losing a very dear friend. So what does Peter do? Well, he does something that may seem a little bit brusque. He put them all out, and he knelt down and prayed. Now, you remember that Jesus did that as well at times. There was one occasion where he took Peter, James, and John, and he told everybody to leave while he went in and performed a miracle of raising someone from the dead. Why putting them out? It's hard to say, perhaps because of the potential for distractions or some sort of a hysterical outburst. It's just, I don't know for sure. But this is something he did privately. He went in and he turned to the body and he said, "Tabitha, arise." And this is very reminiscent of what the Lord Jesus did when he raised the servant girl from the dead. And again, it's very clearly a messianic sign to remind these people that Jesus is their Messiah. And she opens her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. And he gave her his hand and lifted her up. And when he had called the saints and widows, especially the widows, he presented her alive. And you can just imagine the reaction of these people. And this became known throughout all Joppa, and many believed in the Lord. Now, Joppa is a large port city, in contrast to the villages of Lydda and Sharon. And so here, he doesn't say all believed on the Lord, but probably due to the large size, he said many believed on the Lord. And whatever the case is, there were conversions in both of these locations on the heels of messianic miracles, one of healing and one of raising the dead. Okay? And so why is this happening? We know that Peter's going to become involved in the taking of the gospel to the Gentiles, but this is prefaced by these messianic miracles among Jews. Again, I think it's to serve as a reminder that when Jesus says you go from Jerusalem to Judea and Samaria and to the othermost parts of the earth, he's not saying you start in Jerusalem and then leave there and abandon them. No, the work continues in those regions as you extend the preaching of the gospel to other locations. So here he is, by the providence of God, in Joppa. Does Peter understand what's about to happen? I don't think so. There's no evidence that he does. And what's about to happen in his life here in ministry is going to to have overwhelming proportions. And so he stayed there many days. And again, Luke doesn't say how many days, just says many. And he's staying with Simon, a tanner. Now that's interesting. Who is this Simon the tanner? Well, he has the same name as Peter. Remember, Peter was a nickname that Jesus gave to him, Rock, Cephas. But his given name was Simon, Simon Peter. And here's Simon a tanner. That's interesting. The fact that his name's given, I think, is not, it may intend to communicate to us that there's a Simon representing the Jews, and then there's another Simon that he's a Jewish man as well. But notice that he's a tanner. Now, a tanner is someone that handles dead carcasses, right? He tans hides. That would have been considered a work that would render a Jewish person ceremonially unclean. And this, I think, is kind of a little bit of a preview as to what's going to happen, because Peter's going to have a vision in the next chapter. And in that vision, he's going to be given permission by God to eat all kinds of foods that were considered by Jewish law to be unclean. So this idea of Simon being a tanner, messing with a kind of work involving dead bodies that would render a person unclean, kind of is a stepping stone toward what's going to happen in the next chapter. So here we can add the city of Joppa right there. So if you just go from Jerusalem and draw pretty much a straight line, you'll find Lydda, and then onto the coast, the city of Joppa. So again, these are the ones that you need to know for the future quests. Okay, this is what that city looks like today. It's actually kind of it's called Jaffa, and it's kind of tied in with Tel Aviv. There, a bustling city, right on the coast, as you can see there. If you visit today, you'll have the privilege of seeing some coastal beauty. There's the city of Tel Aviv in the background there. In the foreground would be Jaffa, which is the old Joppa. Beautiful, beautiful place. My wife and I had the privilege of visiting Israel in 1999 with a group, and we landed actually in this area right here. We landed in Tel Aviv. All right. Well, things are about to change. There's going to be a huge event in chapter 10 that, as I said before, is going to radically impact the direction of the gospel from here moving forward. And looking forward to sharing that with you in the next lecture.